So one of the ways that I found it useful to think about children's experiences when they come into foster care is based on an analogy that a very lovely psychologist called Andrew Lister offered to me. And he talked about comparing the experience of children coming into care as thinking about first and second languages. So our first language, most of us just learn it at our mother's knee. We grow up with it around us and we learn all the grammar and vocabulary without really trying. And then trying to learn a second language, which I did at school, which was taught to me for an hour a week, and I wasn't very good at it. It was French. But I learnt enough to be able to order a croissant in France. It's a bit like that when children come into foster care. We will see that they've learnt a first language, but this is a language of social interaction, and they will have learnt it from their birth family, and it will include the elements of abuse and trauma and neglect that they've experienced. And when they come into foster care, a bit like being immersed into an environment where everybody's speaking a second language, which is the best way to learn it, rather than like my French lessons, they're immersed in an environment where the second language of social interaction is all around them. And hopefully this is a language where compassion and kindness and consistency are very much at the forefront. And gradually they will start to develop fluency in this language. But one of the useful things that I think this analogy tells us is if I think about what would happen if I was under stress in France. So for example, if I was driving down the road and crashed my car, I know what language would come out of my mouth, and it would be my first language. And this is helpful when we think about the stress that sometimes our children in foster care are experiencing, and that might be stress that's caused by starting school or changes to contact arrangements at the time that they see their family, or other things that can cause them distress, or even just plain excitement. It might be their birthday coming up. And when this happens, they're likely to revert to their first language of social interaction. And this often explains the behaviours that we see. And our job as the people who are caring for them is to try and understand why they've slipped back into their first language, and to remind them and encourage them to continue to develop their skills and their fluency in the new language that we're trying to teach them.